All right, this is Joe Bullis. I'm your clinical coach for MELS 603. It is Thursday, May the 23rd, and we are having our first Zoom session for the summer semester of 2019. Uh, what was on the schedule was just kind of a brief MELS 603 overview, and then I was going to kind of get into the OMA Task 1 and Task 2. But before we start that, let me go ahead and open it up for any questions that you might have about the semester or kind of the timeline of anything, or just questions in general.
I have a question, Dr. Bullis.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Good. Hope you're doing well.
I am, thank you.
Just about the process. So, do we not need to send it to you for first? We need to send it to Dr. Todd, and then do we need to post it to your shell as well, or how's that going to work?
Alan, I'm really glad that you asked that question because I wanted to address that this evening. Dr. Todd and I had a conversation about that. I think it needs to go from one to the other because if we're both getting documents at one time and we're both commenting at one time, I mean that's great. That's some really good feedback. Dr. Todd's a retired superintendent, very experienced educator, very detail-oriented lady, and I think she can really give some good feedback. So you get the benefit of two people giving you feedback. But when it happens kind of at the same time or instantaneously, I think it can create some confusion because we look at it with different perceptions. We have different backgrounds, and I think maybe I don't want to say contradict, but we may give you comments. I may give you feedback, and then Dr. Todd, because of her experience and her background, may give you something that looks slightly different. Or once again, I've known you. This is the third semester that we work together, so I know you. So maybe some things that weren't maybe written down verbatim, I still picked up on because of I just know how you write, and I know the history behind what you've done. And I think doing that, I just don't want to cause any confusion to where I may give you feedback and this you may give you something slightly different, and then that just creates more of a time barrier to get that reviewed and pushed on to task stream. So what Dr. Todd and I had a conversation about was that kind of go back. If I remember correctly, didn't you all have? I think you all have. We first met when we had Dr. Church together, and I know Dr. Church kind of. And I've worked with Dr. Church several times. I think that's the benefit of being able to work with somebody for a long time. Is he had you to kind of post it to him first. He gave you feedback, comments, nothing, detailed, maybe hitting some big things. And then once you kind of finished your peer review and once you kind of got some feedback from Dr. Church, then you send it to me. And then my task at that point in time was to kind of fine tune it and kind of get the details ironed out and just kind of polish it up a little bit. That's the process that I like to follow. And that's what I had a conversation with Dr. Todd about. So what I didn't ask her, and I meant to because we ran short on time, was is she requiring you, I know you're doing the peer reviews, but is she requiring you to turn that document into her in the course shell? If somebody, and I muted everybody, so if you can unmute yourself and somebody would answer that question, that would be a big help.
I think there is a place to turn it in.
Okay, and if you will, look at that and make sure. If it is, then turn it in to Dr. Todd. Now, if she says, hey, I don't want it, and, just go straight to Dr. Bullis, that's fine too. We kind of left it at the fact that it would kind of go sequentially from her to me, and seeing as I'm your clinical coach, and then I'm the one kind of giving you the green light to go ahead and post into task stream and review the turn it in. I think I need to be the the last step in the process. So go ahead and turn it into her. After you do your peer review, if something in her course shell contradicts that, let me know. Once she gives you feedback, you can make any revisions and let me know. I know some of you like to work ahead, and I like to help you in doing that, especially in a semester like we've got coming up now, where it's 10 weeks. So I don't want to do anything to slow you down. And so that's why I wanted to clarify this tonight. And Alan, thanks again for asking the question, because I was going to bring it up anyway. So here's where we'll stand. You do your peer review on the OMA Task 1, Task 2, Task 3, and Task 4. The same process that we've always done for the last 2 semesters. And then you give it to your course instructor for kind of maybe just to knock the rough edges off of it or to give you any thoughts on it. Then if you think you need to make revisions based on those comments, then after you revise it, then you send it to me for review in the internship shell. That's the same process we've always done. I really don't, it works well. It's worked well for your group, your cohort. I really don't see any need to change it at this point in time. And I think Dr. Todd and I kind of got this, finalized. Maybe, like I said, there was a question I meant to ask her that I didn't really have time to get into, and that was about what she had in her course shell. But if something changes or you find out some more information that doesn't play in well with that process that I've just described or the process that we've done all along, just let me know. We'll make adjustments. We'll do whatever we have to do to make sure that you guys are successful in this. And in the situation, if you have already there was a couple of you that had already posted, and that's my fault for even giving you feedback at that point in time, because I'm in a hurry and to help you out and not slowing you down. I try to go ahead and do that, but we need to make sure that we follow the protocol as always. So with your peer review, and then you finalize that, and then you send it to us. So we'll get back into the groove of how we normally do things. Anytime there's a change in personnel, and you'll find this out as an administrator, anytime there's a change in personnel, anybody in a key position, there's some transitional issues that have to be gone through, and that's what we're doing right now. So it's not that it's not nothing that's going to slow us down very much. But I did want to address that. Any other questions before we get started? Just questions in general. We'll get into the OMA here in just a minute. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about the OMA Task 1 and Task 2. Now, Dr. Todd did send me her agenda. I know you've already met with her this week. She did send me the agenda or her notes of what she covered, and really she's pretty detailed in her description of the OMA. I think she gave you some really good information. Basically, what you're doing here in Task 1 is you're just describing the organization that you function within, your school. And when I mean organization, how is it organized? From anything to you're going to get into the schedule in detail, so you don't need to really get into a lot of detail in the schedule. But how's the building flow during the day? Are you in an elementary school? Are you in a middle school? Are you in a high school? Do you have grade levels? Do you have a 4-block level? If you're in a middle school, how do your exploratories rotate into the schedule? So how's the school organized? The hierarchical structure of the school. How many assistant principals are there? Is there a instructional specialist? And kind of, with the principal at the top, like those hierarchical charts, and you can even show that if you wish to, kind of plays out how the school is organized. And that's all about Task 1. Task 2 is instructional capacity building, and it's, as it says in the rubric and in your handbook, focusing in on exceptional children. I know Dr. Todd mentioned to you that exceptional children is just not students with disabilities. It's also AIG, ELL, and 504, and any of those special needs individuals in your school. how are they being served? You know, there's state, local, and especially federal mandates and compliance that are associated with these subgroups of students. You need to be knowledgeable of those. You need to express your knowledge in those. And then you kind of have to need to conduct a needs assessment, and it kind of basically goes down to how these students are served. A lot of times, well, I'm not saying a lot of times, they used to be pulled out of the regular content classroom. Now there's, depending on where you're at, the special needs teacher, the EC teacher, the ESL teacher may push into your classroom and push in and be a co-teaching atmosphere. Is that going on in your school? Is that how you're addressing these students? Sometime if they're OCS in high school, they may be doing some online courses along with their EC teacher. They may have an online instructor that's certified in that particular content area that they're working in. If it's an ESL, they may be pulling them out into small groups or individually to address their language acquisition. So as you focus on that, do a needs assessment on how those students are served, and then look, as you did, if you remember way back into the APSL and the APTL, identify some gaps, and then you want to kind of come up with a plan to make that better as you work with your principal or your site mentor on this. In task 3, oh, and I'm sorry, in task 1, you're also going to address the budget, how the budgetary decisions made, the school improvement team, the principal, who makes those decisions about how the budget plays out. Task 3 is about the schedule. We'll talk about that later. And then task 4 is reflection. So this is a good time for the OMA. A lot of writing. You're not having to meet much with people. And that's a good thing because, as you guys know, during the summer, everybody scatters. So you're not having to have an ongoing PLC meeting like you had in some of your other evidences. And really the key person that you want to collaborate with is maybe your leadership team chairperson, and of course your principal or your site mentor. Usually those 12-month employees who are there and can assist you. As I said, I know that Dr. Todd went into detail on the contextual analysis and the structural capacity building. Please keep in mind that when you talk about, in task 1, when you talk about your organization, you reflect on it internally and externally. Internally, of course, the people in the building, and externally are the people in the community. So how going back to the way you're organized, you know, how does the community play into that organization? Are there grandparents coming for lunch? Are there lunch buddies coming from businesses? Has a business adopted your school and they play into how that building runs on a daily basis? Are there volunteers that come in? If they do, how are they logged? How are they placed? It's really just the nuts and bolts that it takes to make your school function on a daily basis when you're talking about that contextual analysis. Is what does it take on a daily basis to make that school function? How is it organized? Really gives you some good experience, and you may want to have a conversation with your principal about that as how they tweak that or adjust that in the organization, or of course they probably inherited it, but how does that school run on a daily basis as far as the organization goes? Let's scroll on down here to the rubric, make sure that I haven't missed anything. Okay, here we go. Okay, I mentioned to you about internal and external, the management routines. You know, how is the building? You know, how does everybody flow into the building in the mornings and flow out of the building in the afternoon? And how do your special needs students kind of highlight that in task 1? You're going to focus more on task 2. But how do they follow into the routine of the day? Of course, I know everything's off routine because of testing. I'm sure many of you are involved in testing. A lot of people are. But just about how those operations happen in the building. And along with operations, maintenance needs, facility needs, things of that. If somebody, and I'm brainstorming right now, but if somebody wants to rent the gym, or somebody from the community wants to use the facilities, how does that play into it? And I know some middle schools where the county doesn't organize the middle school football team. It's actually by a rec department or a rec league, but they are associated with the middle school and use the facilities. And so if that happens at your school, one of your middle schools, kind of how does that play into it? So everything about the school, it's really just a qualitative analysis of how that school is organized, and really anything that you can think of that might be relevant to share in your narrative. We talk about determine the degree of involvement and participation in the school budget. Once again, does the school leadership team make those budget decisions? Does the principal make those budget decisions? How does that budget come to play? I mean, there's several funding sources that come into a school. Yeah, if you're a Title I school, even if you're not a Title I school, you can have federal funds coming into the way by title. If you're Title I school, you got Title I funds. There may be Title IV funds coming into school. There might be RLIS funds coming to the school, even if you're not a Title I school. Now, and then there's state funds that come into the school. There's textbook money. Who determines how that textbook money's spent? There's school funds from Gates and clubs and things of that nature. How does all that come into play as far as how the money is budgeted for that school? That'll be coming up. You can talk to your school improvement team about that, talk to your principal about that, talk to your school bookkeeper. She's the one that's doing the requisitions and the purchase orders. So that's, don't forget to show that you have knowledge of district, state, especially district policy, but state and federal law and mandates. Make sure that you express that you have knowledge in that. In task 2, you need to work with your site mentor on this about developing a program for instructional capacity. And it says, of course, with that group, it says not to exclude or slight the programs for exceptional learners in all phases. Somewhere in the scale book, it even tells you to focus on the exceptional learners. And AIG would be a good one to focus in on too. How your AIG students served. How are they challenged? So you kind of look at that, identify some area of needs, and then come up with an action plan. That's all in task 2. It's kind of a mini ABSL with some APTL thrown in there, I guess, of doing a needs assessment within a particular area, identifying some gaps, and addressing an action plan. Now, it doesn't mean that your principal has to agree to enact this or implement this. It's just the development there, and then if they choose to develop it or implement it later on, then that's great. It doesn't have to be for you to be proficient in this area, but you will need to work with them in developing this. You need to talk about the formative assessment plan. How is that work within identifying growth and helping some of these individuals? Professional development activities that's associated with these particular groups. And once again, you want to show detailed knowledge in task 2 about the rights of the exceptional learners, not just students with disability, but ELL, Title or at-risk students. Title I deals with at-risk. Because if you're a Title I school, if you're a targeted Title I school, then that money is only spent on some individual students based on their criteria being identified. Title III funds are spent on ESL students. So there's some things that play into that. Monitored heavily. As a matter of fact, I'm getting monitored this December by federal programs to monitor on all our federal plans. So this is, fresh on my mind right now. So that's task 1 and task 2. I've kind of got Dr. Todd's notes here. I really don't see anything else that that I think we need to cover. I think you got everything you need, but so I'd like to kind of open it up at this time for any questions on the OMA Task 1, Task 2, or anything else dealing with this semester.
I have a question, Dr. Bullis.
Hey, Rudy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I hope you are.
Yes, I am. Thank you. My first question is, if I'm a Title I school and there's a lot of McKinney-Vento students and Spanish learner students, would that be good to focus on in the test too?
Absolutely. If that's a high population, high
Yes.
subgroup in your building, especially the homeless, perfect group to focus in on and address their needs to identify some instructional capacity building opportunities there. Yes, certainly.
Okay.
Very good question.
Thank you.
You're
And my
welcome.
second question, sorry, is with the internship hours, like now that like we're in the summertime, how does that work? Like what would be smart for us to do?
Yeah, I would go ahead and if you have logged anything since the end, and I know it was a short break, but if
Right.
you logged anything since the end of 602, you can count those in this semester. Doesn't have to be the starting point, doesn't have to be this week. And I would, if what I did, and I think I've shared this with, I can't remember if I shared it with this class or maybe I shared it with last semester, 603. What I did when I was doing this, we had to do like 440 some internship hours. I can't even remember the exact number, but during the summer months, on those optional work days, I went ahead and went in optional work day. I even volunteered afterward.
Mhm.
I told the principal that I'd just come for one solid week from 8 to 5 every day, and I would just volunteer to do whatever they needed me to do. Make copies, run books. Well, back then we had
Okay.
textbooks when I was teaching, going through the program. But count textbooks, do inventory, cleaning the bathrooms, strip waxing the floors, whatever it took. I just went in and made myself available and volunteered for that. And I kind of wrote it all up in the log as, preparing for the administratively preparing for the next school year, because part of that's facilities, operations, curriculum, things of that nature. So I would go ahead and volunteer a few days and get that knocked out, because it is a short window of time.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Any other questions? If you can put questions in the chat box, or feel free to unmute and ask any question that you need.
I guess you answered my question. The question I was going to ask Dr. Bullitt was that I guess we kind of got to put this together on our own. Since we're not going to be able to have a PLC group or anything like that, we kind of come up with our own gaps and our needs. Correct?
Yeah, that's a good point, David, and thanks for kind of bringing that back up again. Yeah, it is working alongside of your principal or your site mentor. And that's a good thing, because you don't have to form a group of people and then try to get in contact with them after school's out. So just working with your site mentor. You may want to touch base with your school, maybe a couple of individuals from your school leadership team, if you can't really get the chance to talk with them or meet with them before they leave, just to kind of get some information from them, especially on the budget process. So you might want to go ahead and let them know that you might be reaching out to them, or you might want to go ahead and set up a meeting to talk one day before everybody leaves, maybe during the work days, to kind of have a conversation with them and get some information about that from their perspective as well. Good question, David. All right. Well, we're running on just about 30 minutes here. I'm going to throw it out there one more time if anybody has any questions or anything that I can address. If not, we'll probably go ahead and sign off tonight. you know, always contact me with email if you need to. And this is really a fast-paced um, semester, as of course I'm stating the obvious, but I have once again I think I have a 602, a 603, and a 605 group. So I was kind of had to really be creative about how I scheduled my Zoom sessions. And I said all that to say this: if you need to have a Zoom session, if it's an individual Zoom session or just a Zoom session with your group, let me know and we'll work out a time. I do want to send out a reminder to you guys that I'll be on vacation the week of June the 3rd, and we are going so far out of the country and so far back in the woods that I promise you I will not have cellular service or email service. We are hiding from society for about a week. But that will be we're leaving on we're flying out June the 2nd and flying back in the following Sunday. So that Sunday evening, I'll stay up to date, try to get everybody in good shape before we leave Sunday on that Saturday prior to that. And then as soon as I get back, I'll access that stuff. Feel free to email me anyway. If we come into the city for supplies or something, then may certainly be able to check in and see if there's any crises or emergencies. So just to let you know, I'll be incommunicado the week of June 3rd. So, but we'll be back online just as soon as we get back into the country. All right, everyone. Well, I hope you have a wonderful evening. As always, I hope you stay safe and healthy. God bless you all. We will see you next time on another Zoom session. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. Guys, take care. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.